to cover the basics of gait, including a few of the introductory definitions. To begin our discussion of gait, the first point that we need to hit and understand is the concept of a gait cycle. The gait cycle is the point at which a heel contacts the ground until that same heel contacts the ground again. So in this figure here, we have this heel contacting the ground. It's going to progress through, bear the weight, begin a toe off, and then begin to swing through. And at the point at which it touches the ground again, that is deemed the gait cycle. Inside of a single gait cycle, there are two phases. There's a swing phase and a stance phase. The names of these phases correspond to what the leg is doing. During the swing phase, it is not bearing any weight and swinging through. During the stance phase, the leg is bearing the weight. The swing phase makes up about 40% of our gait cycle, again is non-weight bearing, and includes three divisions: an initial swing, a mid-swing, and a terminal swing. The stance phase is the longer of the two at 60% of our gait cycle. Again, this is the phase at which the leg is bearing the weight and includes several subdivisions of an initial contact, a loading response, a mid-stance, a terminal stance, and a pre-swing or a toe-off. This graphic is a cyclical demonstration of the gait cycle. So let's follow this leg here in the gray. We have an initial contact. As we move from that initial contact into this mid-stance, or until the opposite toe leaves, we call that the loading response. Once that toe leaves, now we are in the mid-stance, and that leg is bearing the sole weight of the body. We go through the mid-stance until the heel begins to rise. After the heel rises, we call that the terminal stance, heading into the pre-swing or the toe-off. This is the point here at the end of our terminal stance at which the other leg begins their initial contact. We move through this pre-swing. We now have a toe-off, so we are now in the swing phase of gait. We have an initial swing, our mid-swing, and our terminal swing leading back into our initial contact. This is one more graphic helping us demonstrate just the fact that there are going to be points during walking at which both legs are on the ground and at which only one leg is on the ground. This is corresponding to our stance and our swing phases here. One more graphic. I put this one in to again reinforce this idea of the 60% and the 40%. 40 and 60. So the right leg is going to be in the stance phase for 60% of the time, the right swing for 40. You'll see on the left leg here it's 40 and 60. Depending on the sources that you'll look at, these numbers may change slightly. They may say 35% for the swing phase and 65% for the stance phase, or whatever numbers you may have. For the purposes of this class, these are the numbers that I would like you to know: 60% and 40%. Heading into some definitions, some additional definitions. Within our gait cycle, we are going to have several steps, or two steps. The step is from one initial contact until an adjacent initial contact. The gait cycle is also the definition of a stride length, from a left initial contact until a left initial contact. That is the gait cycle, also known as a stride length. So the step length is from left foot to right foot. The stride is left to left. This is demonstrating these stride and step lengths again. I put in some averages here of 144 centimeters for our stride length, 72 for our step length. Those are just averages, and they vary widely depending on height, depending on speed of walking, depending on pathology. But as an average, these numbers are pretty good. The cadence of our walking is the speed or our step rate per minute. Be careful not to think of this as a stride length per minute or a gait cycle rate per minute, but a step rate per minute. The average adult cadence is 90 to 120 steps per minute. Just a few more terms is our stance width or our base width, the distance at which our feet are spread apart while walking. The faster we walk, the slimmer or the narrower our stance width becomes. There's a bullet point down here talking about crossover during fast walking they may even cross over. During running it certainly will cross over. One more definition to know. This is the degree of toe out. So during an average walking, we generally have some amount of feet angle is maybe the word I'm looking for. There's a wide variance here of 5 to 18 degrees, but the average is about 7. But anywhere between 5 and 18 is considered normal. I'm sure as you guys have walked around campus or wherever you may walk, you've noticed that there's a wide degree of variability in this toe out. To finish this video, I just wanted to include a few points about running and contrast that with walking. Notice that during running we have the exact same swing and contact phase. However, the difference between walking and running is during walking you always have a foot on the ground. During running, that's not always true. There is a flight or a float phase where neither foot will be touching the ground. That is demonstrated here with this graphic. So this is our walking graphic that I have shown you earlier, contrasted with our running graphic, where we have our stance and our swing phase, but with intermittent float or flight phases where there's not going to be any feet touching the ground. This finishes our basic introduction to gait.